Hi, everybody. There has been a question on my mind for a while, and a couple of days ago, one of my subscribers brought a good point up, and he asked me to do a video on it, and I totally agree with that because I've been wanting to do that or find a way to do that because you can't get a straight answer out of anybody. Um, the dilemma is, does dropping a slide on an empty chamber in a 1911 damage the gun? Um, there is different schools of thought and different theories on that, and I uh, I don't really buy any of it, so I kind of wanted to do my own thing. So I contacted Springfield and Kimber and Colt and Smith and Wesson, and I asked them that question: does dropping the slide hurt the gun on an empty chamber? Um, Pretty much the answer that I got from them, I think it was a copy. One email was a copy of the other one because it was word by word, verbatim. They all said that they would recommend against it, and that if you do that, it will damage the sear face and your hammer. Um, Me, I'm a logical person. I can't see that. I don't know how to explain it, but I don't really see it. If you really look at, if you know 1911s, the question I ask is why? Why does it damage the sear face, and the hammer if you just drop the slide? And what that means is, if you have an empty chamber with no mag or mag, and you just pull the slide release down and let that fall forward like that, does that damage anything? So I can't think, for the life of me, I can't understand why that action of this slide moving forward would damage the sear face and the hammer. I don't understand. The only contact point that you have between a slide and a sear is that little guy right there, which is your sear disconnect. That is way, the only way that the sear and the slide is connected. The slide and the hammer aren't even connected. The only connection that the slide and the hammer have is on the face of the hammer. How is that going to damage your hammer? If anybody knows why, please let me know. But I kept thinking and I kept thinking, and I was looking for a way that I can make sense of that statement that, the sear face and the hammer would get damaged if you do it. I honestly think the manufacturer is trying to cover their own ass, um, and they're telling you not to do it because every single one of them said prolong if you do it too many times, but they don't say how many times is too many times. Aren't they supposed to do quality control and find out how many times is too many times? Um, I know for a fact because I had a 1911 before this one. It was a mil spec one. It was my grandfather's, and it's in a safe deposit box now. It's valuable. It's from World War II, and I know for a fact after tens and thousands of rounds, yes, the sear face does get damaged, and yes, the hammer does break. But that's during normal use when you're actually firing a gun. So there has to be, if that statement is true, that dropping the slide will damage the sear face and the hammer, there has to be a difference between bullet in the gun and bullet not in the gun. So the only difference that I can tell, I mean, there are two physical things that we're looking at. One is impact. Two is cushioning of impact. So if you're firing your gun, your gun's been designed to take the force that's going that way. So when the bullet leaves and it cycles the slide, everything, all the weight goes that way. So your gun's been designed to be very strong for forces that push it that way. But when the slide is moving back because of the spring, it doesn't have as much force going back than it does going forward. So I kept thinking, what would be a good way of measuring the force? And the ideas that I have, it costs a lot of money to buy the equipment that you need for that. So I thought of a different way of measuring that. So my understanding was always, if there is a round in the chamber, that would mean that there is a little bit of cushion. So when the slide comes forward, it has a little bit of room to smash or push or squish, or just a little bit, that tiny bit of cushion, that when it goes forward, it's not going forward all the way, it's not slamming forward. But that's easy to find out. Let me make sure. This is a live round. I'm going to drop it in there just for the purpose of demonstration. And I'm going to let this slide go forward. Now, for that to be a cushion, for that bullet to become a cushion, it needs to stick out further from the chamber, from the end of the chamber. But that's pretty much parallel to it. It's exactly flush. It's not sticking out, it's not going in, it's exactly where it should be, right? So there's no possible way that a bullet in there is cushioning the impact of the slide going forward. So that theory for me is out. Second theory for me was, when the round is being chambered from inside the magazine, when the round's being chambered from inside the magazine, when the slide goes forward, it grabs it from back here and it loads it up. Now, your chamber has a ramp and your frame has a ramp, so the bullet will hit the frame and it'll turn upwards. It'll go into the ramp or the throat of the chamber, and it will kind of work its way in. But on the back side, as the slide's coming forward, let's say if this was the slide, as it's going forward, it's tilting up and it's kind of working its way into the ejector. Okay, so if this was the round, or let's say if this is the round, your ejector, it's kind of working its way into the ejector. Your ejector is not going over it. So instead of going over it to grab this little lip, it's actually working its way into the ejector. So I figured maybe that is cushioning some of the impact. So how are we going to measure that? How am I going to measure that? To be honest with you, the equipment that I need to do that it's very expensive. My idea was, if you have a slow motion camera where you can shoot the gun, the frame, or not the frame, the slide being dropped at 10, 20, 30,000 frames per second, then you can clearly see and you can measure how long it takes for the slide to go forward. So I'm gonna make do with what I have, and hopefully that does help. I definitely do see a difference in the numbers, so I think my method does work. And for continuity and for objectivity, I tried the same method 10 times. Now I did three different three different steps to measure this. First step was, how fast will this slide go forward? I wanted to time it, see how fast it goes forward. So the first test I did was no magazine in the gun, and I would drop the slide and let it go forward. And the way I would measure that is I placed two lines on the gun. They're 1 inch apart and 1 inch from the end of the slide release. And when they would line up like that, that would be the end of the test. So I would turn the camera on and release the slide, and when it gets to the end, we'll just time how long it took to go from dead stop to dead stop. Now, if having a bullet in the magazine somehow cushions or slows down the frame, or not the frame, that's the slide, then we should be able to measure that. That's a measurable thing that we can do. So what I ended up doing, because I don't have a slow motion camera, I went to the next best thing, which is my personal camera, which is a DSLR camera. This is a Canon 7D, for those of you who are familiar with it. This camera shoots videos, and the nice thing about that is I can shoot in 60 frames per second. Now that's a long ways away from 30,000 frames per second, like you would see in those, you know, bullet impact videos. But I should be able to slow the video down long enough to be able to tell if having a round in the magazine and the magazine in the gun actually makes a difference. And I was very surprised on what I found. So basically, the first test that I did, I kind of got sidetracked on there. The first test that we did was no magazine, no bullet. Went forward. Second test we did, I loaded 1 round, and that's this round. I also did the test with hollow points. This is the Speer Gold Dot. With round nose ammo, I would load it into the magazine, put the magazine in the gun, and repeat the same process 10 times, and drop the slide 10 times. And I would measure how long it took for the slide to go from dead stop to dead stop, or for the lines to be lined up. So actually, I can show you what I did. Let's go to the video, and I'll show you what we did. Actually, before we do that, I'd like to explain a few different things to those of you who aren't familiar with frames and seconds and all that stuff. So what we did, or what I did, was take the footage, the video footage that I got from the 3 different tests, and I imported them to the computer, and I slowed the video down to 1/100th of its normal speed, so 1% of its normal speed, and that really slows it down. That grabs a 1 second in a real-time scenario, and it stretches it to about a minute, a little over a minute. So you can really see what everything is that's happening. You can really measure it. Now the camera is 60 frames per second, so we're going to measure the time that it took the slide to go from back here to here in frames. Now 60 frames would equal 1 second. So if it took 2 seconds and 41 frames, that's what we're going to call it. We're not going to call it, 1.42 seconds, because that wouldn't be true. Now, one way we can look at it is, because we're stretching that timeline so much, is we can look at it in another way. We can say it was 1 minute and 42 seconds. That would be okay. So if you guys want to quote any of this, make sure you get that right. But if you're going to say seconds, let's do 2 seconds and 5 frames. So okay, now I think we can go to the video. Let's go to the video and pay attention to the yellow numbers. I'll repeat that again for you. So here's one of the tests that I've done. Hopefully you can see my mouse, but pay very close attention to these set of numbers down here in yellow. We are sitting at 30 frames. This is our frames. This is our seconds, minutes, hours. So here we go. So I'm going to back this guy up just a little bit. And what we're going to do is I'm just going to show you what I did. So here at 30 frames, everything is still. At 31 frames is when the slide lets go. And it starts to go forward. So we're going to count from 30 frames to when the red line aligns with this red line. The first red line aligns with the first on the frame. So we'll just fast forward. I'm just going to go ahead and we'll just pinpoint that exactly at the end there. So this is going forward, and this is when the two lines are lined up. Do you guys agree? We're sitting at 2 seconds 11 frames. So if we go from 30 frames to 2 seconds 11 frames, that's 1 second and 41 frames. Now this particular one is an empty chamber without a mag. Okay, so that was the first test we did, and I got some solid numbers, 1 second 41 frames, and I repeated that 10 times, and every time it was 1 second 41 frames, believe it or not. Now 1 second 41 frames might, again, seem too long to you, but remember, we're stretching that timeline. In real life, you divide that 141 by 100. So we're talking 14 thousandths of a second it takes for that slide to fall forward in real time. So that was the first test I did, which was, nothing in the magazine, nothing in the chamber. Actually, there was no magazine in the gun. So the next test I did was this one. The next one would be with the round. I loaded the round into the mag, and I loaded the mag into the gun. Now here again, look at our frames. I'm just going to find our start point here. There we go. And there we go. This is stationary. This is when it lets go. You can even see my finger move down a little bit. So we're going to start at this. So 6 seconds, 33 frames to, again, you can see the barrel, so we're not there yet. Right there. Right there. These two lines are aligned now. So we're looking at 9 seconds, 54 frames. And if you subtract the two from one another, keeping in mind that it's 60 frames per second, not 100, we're looking at 3 seconds, 21 frames. So with a loaded chamber, we got 3 seconds, 21, as opposed to an empty chamber and no magazine in the gun, where we got minute 41 or 42. See, there's a huge difference now. We went from 1 second 41 frames to 3 seconds 21 frames. Now this had a loaded mag in the gun and it actually chambered around. So that was a huge difference. And I was like, oh, I'm sold. There is no possible way that you should be dropping your slide on your gun, because we're looking at a 2 second delay, which, I mean, in real life, it's, again, divide that by 100. It's a very small amount of time, but again, it's a big jump. It's a noticeable difference. It really is. And I did that test 10 times and it came out 321 every time, with the exception of one went a little bit longer. But I think that was my fault. So I was like, oh yeah, I am so wrong. Then something like the back of my head said, why don't we do one without the bullet, but with the magazine in the gun? So what if I put the magazine in the gun and still drop the slide on an empty chamber? So what would happen there? And this is what happened. Next one that I'm going to show you is our this is a magazine in the gun, but no round in the magazine. So still, we're dropping the slide on an empty chamber, except the magazine's in it. And here we go. So again, keep an eye on those yellow numbers. We're started at 11:21, and we will go to right there. Do you guys agree the lines are aligned? So we're going to go right there. So we're looking at 13 seconds, 2 frames. That is 3 seconds and 20 frames. So yeah, I thought if anybody wanted to see this, I'll show it to you. So now I'm like, wait, was it the round or was it the magazine? And I did that test 10 more times, and the result was 3 seconds, 20 frames. So the only difference between a loaded mag and an empty mag was 1 frame. Now 1 frame is, 100 milliseconds in a second, and 60 frames in 1 second. We're talking less than maybe 0.8 seconds difference, 0.6 second difference. That's it's a difference. It's definitely a difference, but it's a very small difference. The magazine definitely slows the slide down. I think it's the friction or the magazine pushing up against the slide. Something. I think the follower is actually pushing up against the slide and moving the slide up, so there's more friction between the rails and the slide and the magazine. But the difference really, and it was the same numbers with the hollow points, same numbers. So is there a difference? Yeah. Dropping the slide without the magazine in, it went 1 second 41 frames. With the magazine in, it went 3 seconds 20 frames. Magazine in with a bullet, 3 seconds 21 frames. So I would probably conclude that it would be okay for you to drop your slide. Now, if you disagree with me and you have a reason why, please let me know. Again, the explanation that the companies gave me was the sear and the hammer is going to break. The only point of connection that the hammer has to the slide is that little bit, and the only point of connection that it has to the sear is a spring-loaded, which takes a lot of the pressure. The spring takes most of the tension or the pressure when the slide's going forward. Not to mention when the slide is forward, or it's getting to the forward point, you have that little hole right there where it sits. So I don't know. That little hole right there kind of resets your sear. So I don't know. Honestly, the companies say that you're not supposed to, but when you only have 2 points of contact, which is that little bit right there, and that sear disconnect, how is it going to damage that? Now, the only way that I can think of that it's going to damage it is that repeated banging and the force going backwards and the force going forward. So repeatedly over time, I can see them wearing out and cracking. But honestly, it just doesn't make sense to me how they would crack for me just to drop the slide. Now, that being said, okay, that being said, I will personally not drop my slide. Now, the reason why is, like I said, the gun's been designed to take the impact going back. When the impact's going forward, or when the weight is going weight of the slide going forward, if you've ever held a 1911 slide, it's kind of heavy. It's it's on the heavier side. And actually, let me do this. Let me take that slide down. I'll be right back. Okay, so here, this is what I wanted to show you guys. Is when you fire your gun, now we have our barrel in. When you fire a 1911 and the slide goes back due to the recoil, it takes the barrel with it. The barrel goes back. You see how it goes down as it goes back? It goes down and it releases the lugs. And once it releases the lugs, the slide is free. So after it cycles, the slide will start moving forward and it will carry the barrel forward with it. So it will go forward and up, backwards and down, forwards and up. Now, the weight of that slide is being absorbed basically by 2 points. Point number one is this little dinky barrel link. Next is that little part back here. I'll do it this way so you can see. So when your barrel link is there, when it goes backwards and down, so that little bit of steel right there, this little pin, and that little dinky link are the only two things, only three things really, that are taking the entire force of that slide going forward. So I need some equipment to measure how hard that goes forward. So when it hits, with how many pounds of pressure it hits. The springs are 10 to 13 pounds. So the pressure going back is definitely greater than the pressure going forward. So keep in mind that the pressure going forward, even though it's not greater than the pressure going backwards, still quite a bit of pressure. We're talking, 13, 14 pounds. And as we saw in the videos, having a magazine and a round in the magazine definitely does slow that momentum down. The more momentum this has, the more force it's going to exert. So having a magazine in it and having the round in the magazine definitely helps. And I ran that test also with snap caps, and it was the same. So I would recommend you not drop your slide the way that most of you do on an empty chamber. Now, if you don't want to put a bullet in it, if you want to put a round in it, that's fine. Just the empty magazine slowed it down quite a bit. So I'm more worried about the link and this little bit of the barrel breaking than the sear face and the hammer being damaged, because that just doesn't make sense to me. But force of the slide banging against this and basically putting all the pressure on the little bit of metal on the link and the little bit of metal back here, that I think, yeah, because this little bit is all that's taking the force of that slide. These logs aren't locking in until it's completely forward. So, whoops. So over time, I can see constantly, without a round or without magazine in your gun, I can see there's breaking something happening with it. But I think that's the only thing that would break. I don't understand. The way the sear and the hammer would break is because, it's been firing and firing and firing and firing. And all the banging. I mean, if you grab two hammers and keep banging them together, eventually they're going to break. But that's normal wear and tear. And the answer that they give you, I think, is just to cover their ass, and it's normal wear and tear. If anybody has any proof that dropping the hammer, not the hammer, the slide on an empty chamber with a magazine in breaks the sear face and the hammer any sooner or any faster than actually firing the gun, let me know. I'd love to know. But this is pretty much all I could find out. Again, I'm open to criticism, so if you have a reasonable response, let me know. If you have proof, let me know. Not hearsay. Don't tell me, so and so said you can't. If Sergeant Gunny Hermes or Hermes or whatever told you, that's hearsay. I want to see proof. I want to see numbers. Okay, let me know. But this is basically, what I think. So, let me know. Let me know what you think, and if you have any questions. All right, guys. See ya.